On 5 News, Donald Trump goes on the attack. He dismisses his boast about groping women as he faces Hillary Clinton in the second presidential debate.
This was locker room talk. I'm not proud of it. I apologize to my family. I apologize to the American people.
I think it's clear to anyone who heard it that it represents exactly who he is.
It was bitter, it was personal, it was watched by millions. But what has it done to Donald Trump's chances of becoming US president? Also, the father stabbed to death while posting cards announcing the birth of his baby. His widow demands an inquiry into how his psychotic killer was allowed to be free.
If someone who's so mentally unfit, how could they be allowed to be at liberty to walk around with knives?
Footballer Ched Evans denies rape as he gives evidence at his trial. And the Prime Minister says no to MPs demanding a vote on Brexit. As retailers warn, prices will rise in the shops if Britain doesn't get a good deal. Hello and welcome to 5 News. I'm Sian Williams. She said he was unfit for office. He said if he was president, he'd jail her. Last night's debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton was one of the ugliest anyone could recall. After that video had emerged where Mr. Trump boasted about groping women, perhaps it wasn't surprising that the event got personal very quickly. He said those comments were just locker room talk and launched an extraordinary attack on Bill Clinton's conduct. Simon Vigar reports now on a bitter night in Missouri.
Hillary Clinton knew Donald Trump would come out fighting, and there was no handshake for the man accused of sexism and sexual assault.
You described kissing women without consent, grabbing their genitals. That is sexual assault.
This was locker room talk. I'm not proud of it. I apologize to my family. I apologize to the American people. Certainly I'm not proud of it, but this is locker room talk. You know, when we have a world where you have ISIS chopping off heads.
And there's the diversion, straight on to the Middle East. But it was never going to be that simple for Mr. Trump after this recording from 2005 was published. He is on this coach, unseen, but the microphone is very much working.
I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the
Trump now claims he was just bragging.
But I have tremendous respect for women.
Have you ever done those
women
things?
Have respect for me. And I will tell you, no, I have not. And I will tell you that I'm going to make our country safe.
And then he's on to border controls. This was Mrs. Clinton's take.
And he has said that the video doesn't represent who he is. But I think it's clear to anyone who heard it that it represents exactly who he is.
Trump's diversion tactic includes attacking Mr. Clinton with unproven claims.
If you look at Bill Clinton, far worse, minor words, and his was action. His was what he's done to women. There's never been anybody in the history of politics in this nation that's been so abusive to women. So you can say any way you want to say it, but Bill Clinton was abusive to women. Hillary Clinton attacked those same women and attack them viciously. 4 of them here tonight.
So much of what he's just said is not right, but he gets to run his campaign any way he chooses. When I hear something like that, I am reminded of what my friend Michelle Obama advised us all. When they go low, you go high.
Trump bizarrely avoided staying at his allocated spot, instead standing right behind his opponent. It had been billed as the nastiest debate ever, and it lived down to that.
Secretary Clinton, does Mr. Trump have the discipline to be a good leader?
No.
I'm shocked to hear that.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
That refers to when Mrs. Clinton had a private email account when she was Secretary of State. Mrs. Clinton is generally acknowledged as the winner of the debate, and she is still ahead in the opinion polls, but she did not bury the Republican nominee. At the end, they were asked if they admired anything about one another.
His children are incredibly able and devoted, and I think that says a lot about Donald.
She does fight hard, and she doesn't quit, and she doesn't give up, and I consider that to be a very good trait.
neither will give up with Election Day less than a month away. Simon Viger, 5 News.
A young widow has called for an inquiry into how a mentally ill man was free to stab her husband to death days after the birth of their first child. Dr. Jeroen Ensink had left the house to post cards announcing the birth of their daughter when Femi Nendap stabbed him to death in a psychotic rage. Charges of knife possession and assault against him had been dropped less than a week earlier, as Catherine Jones reports. Jeroen's wife Nadia says failings by the authorities have left her without a husband and her daughter without a father.
He had the biggest heart. He was such a good man.
But 10 days after the birth of their first child, Jeroen Ensink's wife was robbed of the good man she'd married.
So many people are affected, so many people are victims of one single mindless act.
That mindless act committed by Femi Nandap, a 23-year-old Nigerian student suffering from psychosis brought on by cannabis use. In May 2015, he'd been charged with wielding a knife in public and assaulting a police officer. But on December the 23rd, the charges were dropped. 6 days later, he stabbed Jeroen Ensink to death.
If someone who's so mentally unfit, how could they be allowed to be at liberty to walk around with knives? Somewhere along the line, in my opinion, there is a failing.
Dr. Ensink had only been 50 yards from his front door when he was attacked. He'd gone out to post the cards announcing the birth of his daughter Fleur. In court, 9-month-old Fleur was cuddled by a relative as her mother tearfully demanded an inquiry. In the future, she said, anyone arrested in similar circumstances should be referred to a secure unit for proper assessment and treatment and not given bail so easily. This represents a failure of the health and judicial systems, she said. Nandap admitted manslaughter by diminished responsibility and was detained in hospital with no time limit. Nadia is still trying hard to rebuild her life.
You know, by me leading life to the fullest, and as difficult as it is, but Jeroen would want us to be happy.
But lessons will not be learnt, Nadia says, until there are changes to the system that prevent other people losing their loved ones as she has. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
A 15-year-old boy has pleaded guilty to murdering a mum and her daughter in their homes in South Lincolnshire. Elizabeth and Katie Edwards was found dead in their beds in Spalding in April last year. Another teenager, a 15-year-old girl, denies murder but admits manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Southern Railway is taking legal action to try to halt a series of strikes by workers. The first is a 3-day walkout. It's due to start tomorrow. It's all because of a row about the role of conductors. Theresa May has ruled out giving MPs a vote on Brexit. The former Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg, the ex-Labour leader Ed Miliband and some former Tory ministers have been among those wanting the Commons to have a say on what happens next. But the PM spokesman said to second-guess the British people would be unacceptable. Here's our political editor, Andy Bell.
First stop on the European tour, Theresa May in Denmark, trying to reassure her hosts today about Britain leaving the EU.
I want the agreement that we come to reflect the kind of mature, cooperative relationship that close friends and allies have.
But back home, MPs are starting to demand that they get a say on whatever that relationship looks like.
Let the government set out their strategy, set out their plan, and if they can win the consent of MPs, after all the Conservatives have a majority, that's fine, they can proceed with the negotiations. But let those negotiations proceed on the basis of clear consent from the Parliament of the country.
But it doesn't look as if that's going to happen. Instead, the government says some MPs are manoeuvring on this to undo the referendum result.
As the Prime Minister has said more than once, we will make a success of Brexit, and no one should seek to find ways to thwart the will of the people expressed in a referendum on the 23rd of June.
Meanwhile, 100 business bosses have signed a letter deploring recent government suggestions on the employment of foreign workers. Anthony Lau is one of them.
So this is the bike hangar. There are 6 spaces inside.
He's the founder of a company manufacturing specialised bike shelters. After the last few days, he felt he had to speak out.
We need to send a message that we welcome everyone here, we give everyone an equal chance, and things like this that the government are trying to propose are only going to have a negative impact on growth of small businesses.
And you think the government's sending out the wrong message right now?
Oh, for sure. Definitely, for sure.
She has said Brexit means Brexit, but the details are complex and everybody wants their say.
They do, but it looks like MPs aren't going to have a say at all, Andy.
Well, they will get a say, they'll get to discuss it, and they will get to debate it, and there will also be a vote because they have to repeal the European Communities Act, which is the act which took Britain into the EU in the first place over 40 years ago. But what the government is adamant on is that MPs will not get to determine the negotiating position of Britain as they go into talks with the other 27 members of the EU. And that is what people like Ed Miliband want. They want a vote somewhere in the process to say this is the negotiating position sanctioned by Parliament. The government has come back and said, no way, that is going to remain absolutely the prerogative of the government and nobody else.
And among all the politics of Brexit today, a new warning that prices could rise because of it. What's that about?
Yes, the British Retail Consortium are saying that if Britain doesn't negotiate a good deal with the EU at the end of all this, then prices will go up because there'll be tariffs making whatever is imported into this country more expensive. And that comes on the day when in some airports at Bureau de Change, a pound won't even buy you €1 because the pound has fallen so far. But for those supporting Brexit, they say this is just another argument as to why Britain should get on as quickly as possible and negotiate a deal with the EU as close as possible to free trade.
Andy, thank you. Still to come on the programme. As a crackdown on internet trolls is announced, we hear from a woman abused online after a tweet about the X Factor.
The threats keep coming. They never stop. For the last 5 years, there hasn't been a day that I haven't been targeted.
I am home.
I am home.
I am home.
And the celebrities campaigning for young people to get more help for their mental health. All that and more after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News. Footballer Ched Evans has begun giving evidence in court about the night he's accused of raping a young woman in a hotel room. At his retrial at Cardiff Crown Court, the 27-year-old said he was sure the woman was not too drunk to consent to sex. Let's talk to Dominic Reynolds, who is in Cardiff now. Dominic, what else has Ched Evans been saying?
Sian, the 4th day of this rape trial was the first that the jury got to hear from the man at the centre of it, Ched Evans. He arrived with his lawyer this afternoon. He was asked to walk the jury through exactly what happened on the night of May the 29th, 2011. The footballer, who was playing for Sheffield United at the time, went on a night out. He said there were 5 friends there. They went to 2 bars, a club and a kebab shop. And after that, at about 4 a.m, Ched Evans said he got into a taxi, went to a Premier Inn, and he joined his friend in a room with the alleged rape victim. Now, the key part of today's evidence was when he was asked if the woman was too drunk to consent. He said no. He was asked, "Did you rape her?" He said no. Now, he denies 1 count of rape. His cross-examination will continue tomorrow.
Dominic, thank you. The law is being toughened up against so-called online trolls. New guidelines will cover a range of offences. They include posting someone's personal information online, inciting people to gang up and harass others, or posting a digitally altered picture designed to cause humiliation. Charlotte Grant has the details.
They call me paedophile, liar, prostitute, drug dealer, witch.
For Nicola Brooks, there wasn't just name-calling, there were doctored images too. There's just one of the hundreds she received, when all she did was post 1 comment supporting an X Factor contestant online, and yet it led to 5 years of online abuse.
The threats keep coming. They never stop. For the last 5 years, there hasn't been a day that I haven't been targeted. And my family's suffered, my relationships have suffered, because you are isolated and to the point you are suffocated, that it just dominates your life. You know, it's not something I can just ignore or walk away from.
Now new guidelines are being issued to help stop people like Nicola being trolled by helping police identify when it becomes a crime. Offences include doxing, which is posting someone's personal information online like a home address or bank details, virtual mobbing, which is encouraging others to harass people online, and baiting, which is labelling someone as sexually promiscuous or posting photoshopped images. The Crown Prosecution Service says cases of children sexting when they send sexual images to each other shouldn't lead to prosecution so long as they're in a consenting relationship. But if one person is older, the new guidelines mean they could be viewed as grooming.
Obviously, Twitter and Facebook and other social media can be a force for good, but they can also be abused. And what the CPS is saying is we can use existing laws to deal with you, and we're putting you on notice that if you're going to behave like this, we'll come after you.
But Nicola worries whether the new guidance will make a difference.
Every few years they have to rehash and redo these guidelines, because as long as the internet and the technology evolves, the crimes online are going to evolve, you know, whether it's major fraud or anything. But the trolls, you know, the abusers, the offenders online, they will always find ways around this system.
The new rules are meant to make it clear about what is acceptable behaviour. If it wouldn't happen offline, it shouldn't happen online either. Charlotte Grant, 5 News.
Samsung has reportedly had to pause production of its Galaxy Note 7 smartphone because of fears they could catch fire. Samsung issued a recall because of the same problem last month, but the latest incidents are said to involve replacement phones. They're supposed to go on sale here in 2 weeks. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry have been marking World Mental Health Day today. They took a group of young people who've had mental health problems and the people who've supported them for a ride on the London Eye. William, Kate and Harry have made the issue one of their biggest causes, and William had a message for all of us. It's okay to ask for help.
We all have mental health, like we do physical health, good or ill. But not seeking help at those times when it all seems too much, or we are depressed or anxious, can impact the rest of our lives. Put simply, the three of us want to make asking for help no longer a big deal.
Well, many young people are afraid to share their true feelings, often because of what their friends might think. Today, Jordan Stevens, the singer with Rizzle Kicks, launched his campaign to change that with a song written about his own struggles with mental health. But if children do seek help, is the support there for them? Minnie Stevenson finds out.
I'm struggling to find the edge. I don't want to cut corners.
Now, fans will recognise Jordan Stevens as one half of the band Rizzle Kicks, but the lyrics of his latest song, Whole, are particularly personal on World Mental Health Day. Alongside the NHS, Jordan's released this track to reach out to young people after research has revealed many with mental health issues are struggling to get the support they need because they feel stigmatised. Jordan, who has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, met with this class today to tell them he understands firsthand how hard it can be.
I think it's actually when you get into kind of secondary school where people's hormones are shooting all over the place, and yeah, man, I felt like an outcast a lot. You know, people used to say with my ADHD, I used to be so like up and down. You know, that I'd get called hyper, nuts, crazy all the time.
A survey of 11 to 24-year-olds who have mental health difficulties found more than a third had felt stigmatised. Just over half of them reported this hurtful behaviour came from their own friends, and almost the same proportion said they were less likely to seek professional help as a result.
I don't think we'll ever get rid of bullying altogether. That's bound to happen. But I think these sorts of campaigns can make a serious difference. And the impact is that people come forward more quickly and more people come forward. I know that in the last 7 or 8 years, the number of people coming forward into services has gone up by about 30%. So I'm confident we're doing the right thing.
I know you wanna get me home.
I am Whole.
The I'm Whole campaign, supported by celebrities like James Corden, is aimed at getting kids to speak up and not suffer in silence. So we asked this one class today whether they feel mental health is something they're comfortable talking about.
It's still not easy to go up to someone and just go, I think I'm depressed, I think I might need some help. And I think that is the place that we should want to get to.
Do you think guys are as forthcoming? Do you think they talk about mental health as much as girls, or do you think it's not talked about as much?
Well, usually men have to like man up
and like, have to go through their struggle by themselves.
The way like people around you portray it, it seems as if it's like the worst thing to have ever, when it's just another thing that makes you you.
Jordan told me he hopes he can use the power of celebrity to speak to those struggling and tell them they are not alone. Minnie Stevenson, 5 News.
And that's it for now. I'm going to be back at 6:30 with 5 News tonight. We're going to be joined in the studio by Jordan Stevens of Rizzle-Kicks to talk more about the I Am Whole mental health campaign. Also be live from the United States with the latest reaction to that very bitter presidential debate. The weather now, though. Kirsty McCabe has it for you. I will see you again at 6:30. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.